So everybody knows all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 are always brought to us by the official beer of ZASLOW Show 2.0. Pick up yourself a fresh six-pack of Johnny Cuba at your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. If you haven't tried Johnny Cuba yet, we're talking European roots with a Caribbean soul. Refreshing German lager in a can. That's how you want to enjoy Game 3 tonight. We'll always drink responsibly, and that's what you could do in the comfort of your own home. You enjoy a Johnny Cuba in your right hand, and you're doing fist pumps with your left hand after Jimmy Butler leads the Heat to a win tonight. Don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us here is our pal, ESPN's Israel Gutierrez, as we're getting ready for Game 3 tonight. What has been, one of the things that I love about the NBA playoffs, Israel, from game to game, the overreactions from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. What's some of the wildest stuff that you've heard so far through these first two games? Because I like the disrespect. I want everybody to doubt the Heat, but you got to be kidding me with the angle of the Nuggets played so terrible and only lost by 3. Get the hell out of here with that.
No, I mean, it's crazy to not give a team credit. Like, it's as if playing, an offensive heavy team, right? A team that does great numbers offensively and it's super efficient and, seems unstoppable at times. Like, yes, the deeper you get into the playoffs, the harder it is supposed to be for those teams to execute. And the Heat defense was especially good. And I just don't think that maybe they're making the connection because, Kevin Love was on the floor. Duncan Robinson was on the floor. How can the defense be that good? But it just was because other guys, partially because it doesn't seem like Michael Malone and the Nuggets are making the Heat pay for having those guys on the floor. It's like, they made them pay for the switches early in game 1 and dominated, little Gabe Vincent in the paint early on in that game. But in this one, it was, they try to run their regular stuff and didn't really take advantage of Duncan being out there, didn't take advantage of Kevin Love being out there when he was. And so it's just one of those things where it's like maybe they don't know how the Heat are winning. And so they just need to talk about one team or the other, but whether the Nuggets are doing well or doing poorly. But it just doesn't really give the team that played really good defense enough credit. I mean, even the stuff that Jokic did make, you're just like, man, those are tough shots. And so you got to tell yourself, hey, that's the reason he's the MVP. This should be, if you're the Heat, the toughest test we faced so far. And they're doing it. And so they just, managed to get one with playing just harder than the Nuggets were.
And the Nuggets, how terrible could the Nuggets have been playing when they were ahead by 8 going into the fourth quarter? If that's the case, we're playing so bad, but we're only up and we're still up by 8 points. Like, the Heat aren't the Hornets. They're not the Rockets. They're not the Pistons. You were up by 8. You weren't playing that bad. And the Heat took it from you in the fourth quarter. Like, that was not a game that was stolen. The Heat took that shit in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, let's not play the Celtics game of winning quarters, which is essentially what you're doing there. It's like because they lost that 8-point lead pretty quick. And I think part of what the Heat need to do is constantly score against that team. And as long as, they're doing it at an efficient rate, which they were throughout that game, you knew the defense was going to come through just enough. And so I would say, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
Just as far as how you're just saying as far as how poorly, it was perceived that the Nuggets were playing.
Yeah, I would say that, for a team that in the Miami Heat, they've done this a ton of times in the playoffs, overcome double-figure deficits also in the fourth quarter. So an 8-point lead going into the fourth quarter, if you're a well-coached team, if you're a well-prepared team, you should know that means nothing. And it doesn't matter where you're playing. And so if you have to convince that team at this point that you are, you need the effort, need more effort, then they're not ready for the moment. And I think this is part of what I was saying, going into this series is the Nuggets haven't really faced any adversity yet in these playoffs. And, you hear every championship team, I think Chris Bosh says it all the time, every year a championship team comes across a time where they think everything's going wrong, it's not going to work out for them. And the Nuggets haven't experienced that. They've been in first place since December. They've been coasting through these playoffs. Now they have to face what they need to do to get past this last stretch. And maybe that was enough of a wake-up call for them. Maybe they're going to need to actually be behind in the series to do it. Maybe they're not capable of doing it because, Michael Porter Jr. makes defensive decisions based on whether his shots are going in. So I think we're going to see what happens there. But I think it's a lot of credit to Miami.
Israel, that closeout by Michael Porter on the Gabe Vincent 3 early in the fourth quarter is such a bad look.
There was a lot of
miscommunication. Right?
I do. There's a lot of miscommunication, period, I think, with the Nuggets throughout that game. In how they were playing pick and rolls. There was one where I think Gabe just was wide open from 15 feet because Jamal Murray was switching, and the other, I forget the other player, maybe it was KCP, was not. And then they both left Gabe and left a wide open player, a wide open shooter with a 15-foot jumper. It just didn't seem like, again, they were prepared for the moment. And it wasn't as if that just showed up in the third and fourth quarters. Like, it showed up in the first quarter. And it's one of those situations where, all right, I kind of expect my coach in the finals to not just tell me after the game that there was a consistent lack of effort throughout. If it was evident in the first quarter, it shouldn't have been also evident in the fourth quarter. And I think, again, I don't know if that speaks to the coach-player relationship or to maybe the players just feeling a little overconfident because of where they were throughout the playoffs and through 7 quarters in this finals. But it's just not a great sign. And it just kind of goes to show you how admirable it is that the Heat, save for maybe a game in Boston where they just kind of said, yeah, we didn't really play like ourselves, that they've been on it pretty much every game.
What did you make of the whole to-do with Eric Spoelstra's response to Ramona Shelburne? Like the Denver radio, and Denver radio is looking to get mad at anybody. They think Coach Spoelstra's the biggest asshole in the world now for what he said to Ramona Shelburne. And to me, like, 2 things. Number one, I don't think his response there was directed at her whatsoever. I think it was directed in general. And number 2, I don't know where it came from, but it was a really uncharacteristic moment from him, who is such a nice and good dude. What did you make about all that?
Well, I mean, I'll start there. Like, I do think Spo's a super nice guy. He's also had his moments on the podium. Like, he can be a savage out there. And like, I actually write a story on ESPN.com. I don't know when the heck it's running. But like, he's had his moments. Like, he drops a subtle, is it the term? I don't even know how to answer that. Like, he said that a few times, and that's like a gut punch to people. He said the other day when they were talking about the undrafted players that's insulting or
I don't think it's
and
insulting.
then, that storyline's over.
Truth. I don't think it's
no.
Insulting.
Well, I mean, it's the thing. Like, you got to think about it from his perspective. Like, he is one of them. Like, he is an unheralded guy that the organization stuck with through some tough times and are benefiting from all of that work and his improvement. And that's what everybody on this team has been. Hey, they've stuck with them, did the work, and have benefited from the work at every step of the way. Then, like, even Duncan Robinson, he didn't just stop when he was a 45% shooter. Obviously, it all came crashing down on him, and he got better and better. And now look at him; he's able to perform at a higher level than before. And so that's what Spo is like. Spo wasn't a perfectly shaped coach when he was winning championships. He still had some growth to do then. He's still probably finding little things he can do, improve upon now. But like, that's when he means that storyline is over. He means, like, look, that was cute when they were just starting up, but you guys haven't been around this whole time. So don't just make it that's what they are now. By now, they are rotation players on a championship team who have been there, done that with that story. They don't want to talk about it all the time over and over again. So Spo's going to sort of step on that for them. And, so in those moments, he has had, a protective sort of relationship, right? With the media, meaning protecting his players. But let's go look at some old Greg Popovich footage. Let's go look at some old Larry Brown. Like, let's not get on Spo as if he's being this all-time jerk because he's responding to a question that Ramon is asking that, as he sees it, insults the competition. right? So he's not going to let that even get out there. Like, oh, that we just kind of pushed him this way and all of a sudden we can control the MVP. Like, that's crazy talk. And so he was ready for that, regardless of who would have asked the question. He knew, maybe unlike the Nuggets players who didn't recognize the Heat come back from deficits in the fourth quarter all the time, he knew that Jokic has those numbers when scoring a ton in the playoffs and the win-loss record. So he knew that question was coming, and he was prepared to answer it that way, regardless of who asked. So I think it's funny that happened, and that it's being received that way, that he's the big bad bully now, which is like so not who Spo is, especially, and speaking of, like, you just got here, like the way, like, go back and think about Spo when he was in his third year with the big three. And it's like, you think he's like acting this like big bad bully guy then? Like, that's going to work for him? No, like, he was a humble worker the same way he is now. It's just that now he's experienced so much that he can tell people, yeah, no, that's wrong. And I'm confident enough to say this boldly because it gets across what my guys do, not what their weaknesses are.
When Duncan Robinson is mean mugging late in the fourth or mid fourth quarter of game 2, is he mean mugging for the enormity of the moment and how he's performing, or is he mean mugging secretly at the Miami Heat coaching staff for not playing him all year?
I think he's just releasing all the joy of all the hard work that he did to get to that, because, like, if he was happy with earning, that whatever it was, $100 million contract and having that one spectacular year, like, he never would have gotten to this point. And so he is, as Spo talks, like, when Spo talks about these guys in public and about how competitive they are and how they're always that competitive in practice, like, nobody's gonna withstand that and either not be better or they just wouldn't be around, right? So, like, Duncan withstood all of that, meaning he is that level of competitor. And if he had a down cycle or a cycle where he was questioning himself, that he sort of worked his way out of it. And so that reaction is all of that coming out at a time where everybody's watching, and it's just like this perfect storm. And it just happens. Like, there's no chance he thought that about that. I mean, I heard him say afterward, like, it's just, he didn't think he'd be, pulling that one out. It just kind of happened. But that's what all that is. And it's got to feel great. Like,
so awesome.
Nobody had to be more geeked from that performance than him, and probably second place from Max Strus.
It's so awesome. Now, right now, Tyler Hero has not been cleared as of right now. If he does get cleared, what do they do? And I'll add to it, do you believe that the run that the Heat are on has had anything to do with Tyler not being in on the offense?
I mean, that part for me is a pretty short no. Like, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think it would have been ruined if he were there. I think it would have been still just as structured, just as disciplined, with just one more ball handler, one more creator. And if he was making silly or, correctable mistakes over and over again, then they just would have, probably lessened his minutes. I don't think it would have been something that would have cost this team to this run. And what do they do with him? I think they just kind of treat it almost the way they treated Kevin Love going into this series, right? Like, they didn't play him in game 1 because, hey, what was going well at the end of that Boston series, we're going to see if it goes well here. And, Spo said afterward, he probably shouldn't have. He probably should have gone back to what had been working over a bigger sample size. And I think they've had a large enough sample size without Tyler to say, okay, we don't need you. Not, no insult. We don't need you right now. And so I feel like they'll treat it with more of an eye, like, balance there, where as opposed to with Kevin Love, they didn't play him at all in game 1. I think they would, if things are looking okay in the first quarter, early second quarter, go ahead and play him for 4 or 5 minutes, see what happens. If he looks like he's, in rhythm and helping the team execute, great. He can play kind of normal minutes. Maybe Strus gets a couple taken away. Maybe Lowry gets a couple minutes taken away. And if he doesn't look great, then you don't even put him back in the second half. You just kind of say, all right, we tried that out. Let's make sure we We, keep the goal being the goal, which is winning the game, and we'll try to incorporate him a little further, maybe in game 4. So I think that's probably the way they're going to treat that.
It's so hard because, they don't have time for him to ramp up. They don't have time for him to get acclimated. And you don't want to be in a situation where, and I don't know if this is why they lost or not, but it feels very similar to 2009 when you had the Magic and the Lakers and Jameer Nelson had been out for so long. And he came back for the finals and, they lost in 5 games. Like, they have not brought him back. It wasn't the same. It has a little bit of a feel like that. I think the way you wind up treating it is, I think you give him the Mike Miller treatment if he plays, where we're going to throw you out there for a few minutes.
Yep.
Knock down a shot or two. All right. We'll give you some more minutes. If not, that's it for tonight. I think that's the way you got to do it.
I think the difference with the Jameer Nelson situation is just because he was a point guard and they were so point guard center pick and roll dominant that it was, not just incorporating somebody in, it was incorporating your main ball handler who had gotten into a rhythm, etc. And Rafer, that was Rafer Alston's team, right? Maybe. He's kind of more of a rhythm player. And so I don't think they would give Tyler those types of responsibilities. The thing that I think would keep him from playing more is just the report that I had, read about his hand swelling up after workout still. And that would concern me because then you're just putting an extra risk factor on top of the risk factor of him not playing well. And so it seemed to have happened on such a, not serious of a hit, right? And so to have it still responding that way without being, taking a serious fall or that kind of contact, I'd be more concerned about that than I would whether he plays poorly.
Will either one of these teams be up 3-1?
Oof, that's a tough one. I don't think the Nuggets are going to be. As much as, I think the Heat can lose a game at home to the Nuggets, I don't think they'll lose back-to-back. If the Nuggets figure something out in this game 3, then you just kind of know Spoelstra will have something for the following game. But I don't know if they will necessarily. I think the answer is going to be play harder, and the Heat's going to pretty much be prepared for that. I don't know if that means, less wide open threes and more backdoor cuts, etc. But I don't know if, the Nuggets answer isn't just going to be run our stuff better, play harder on defense, and we'll win because, we barely lost that game too. And we didn't really get great performances from everybody else. So I think it's either 3-1 Heat where they just kind of, continue to take advantage of their execution and their defensive abilities, or it's tied at 2 and going back to Denver.
This is one of those scenarios where I missed the 2-3-2 format of the finals. The first year that they changed it from that was 2014, Heat and Spurs. They went back to this. And I always felt the 2-3-2 format, if the road team gets one of the first 2 games, you're in great shape because you would feel like the Heat can win 2 out of 3 straight at home, and then you're up 3-2 in the final couple games. Like, this is the scenario where I miss that 2-3-2 format. I feel like the Heat would be so golden.
So you're saying I think it's more difficult to win 3 games in a row, even if you are at home.
It's very difficult. But if you got a split in the first 2, you'd feel great that you could win 2 out of 3 now at home, and you're up 3-2 to go back for the final 2 games. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe. I kind of like this situation. I kind of like, hey, you split the first 2 and you only have to win 2 in a row to maintain the home court edge. And then you're immediately putting pressure on the home team in game 5. But I mean, I guess it just depends on how you see it. And they're not going back to 2-3-2. So
they're definitely not going back to 2-3-2. Do you have any concern with Jimmy's performance through the 2 games? I guess there's concern where is he fatigued by this time of year, his legs, that whole deal. Obviously having the extra day leading up to tonight is a good thing, but he was playoff Jimmy in the fourth quarter. And what do you have? 10 points, I think it was in the fourth quarter of game 2.
Yeah.
Look, 3-pointer in the corner, 3-point playoff, a runner, another jumper, couple free throws. Are you concerned at all with him so far these 2 games?
So yes and no. I wasn't until I saw him come back in the fourth quarter, and he just looked like he was obviously limping and from sitting for a while. And so it made me wonder if he was playing that calculated style because he physically couldn't do it if they needed him to be the 40 point, 10 rebound guy. But, looking back, let's just say he hadn't been limping, right? I would argue that he was playing that style because it was working. And when they needed him to sort of seal the deal, if you will, with the pressure shots, he did that. He got the and one and he got the 3-pointer. And so I'm not sure if he is incapable of doing that because of what seems to be that lingering ankle injury, because there's other times where he is, aggressive and leaping and getting to the rim. He's just not looking for the shot because there's either help there or he's just not seeing it. But he doesn't look like he's not getting off the ground comfortably. Then he looks okay. There's an image of him floating around defending that last shot from Jamal Murray, but it's a still frame image. I don't know if he was, and he also could have been being very careful not to foul, because if you jump too aggressively, you might foul a shooter there. So I guess that's a long way of saying I'm not sure if he is fully healthy. I don't think so, based on the limp in that fourth quarter.
You think he might be pacing himself for the fourth quarter of these games?
I think he still believes he's got a burst in him, and when it's necessary, he'll utilize it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Hey, man, so tonight, the Heat go up 2-1. I mean, I know you said you think there's a better chance of the Heat going up 3-1 than the other way around for sure. You don't see the Nuggets going up 3-1. Are the Heat taking a series lead tonight?
I think so. And I think the Game 6 experience from the Celtics series is probably the driving force there for Spo.
They lost 2 in a row at home.
But just that feeling in particular, like, don't recreate that, at least not right off the bat. Like, make sure that you have that feeling out of your system and not sort of let it linger. And then, you really don't know how a team can respond. Denver could be a championship type team, or Nikola Jokic could dominate a game from start to finish, and there might not be much the Heat can do about that. So I would say that would be probably more likely as a scenario in Game 4. So I think the Heat, I do think the Heat go up 2-1.
I think we're getting an all-time great crowd tonight. We haven't hosted a finals game in 9 years. And this team's got there's a different feel to it because we got that underdog story to it. The whole thing is so unlikely. I think we're getting an all-time Miami Heat crowd tonight.
And let me add this part, because doing this podcast, 4 years of Heat, that goes through the 4 years that LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Blayne played together down here. There's 3 episodes out already, by the way.
Okay, cool.
iHeartRadio and the NBA and wherever you get podcasts. What I've learned is like how much the people who played in those finals and against the Heat in those playoff runs loved the atmosphere in Miami. Like, they absolutely talk about it in a glowing way that, some of the memories for them will obviously bad, but when they did, go in there and win, like, the Spurs did a couple of times, they loved the atmosphere, and it's hard for them to forget the image of the all white and, the Seven Nation Army. And, now it would be Pepas if that was the case. Like, all those things, those things have lingered now for a while in the minds of, retired NBA players. They probably current NBA players think about that and they see those images. So the idea that Miami is like this weak basketball town or this weak basketball arena or an easy place to go win, like, it's kind of crazy because it's been different for a while now.
So what is each episode on this show that you're doing now? Like, you focus on a specific game? What do you do? So
it's basically taking you through the entire 4 years. And so, there's highlights to each year. So break it down to within an 8-episode stretch. And episode 3 takes you through the loss to the Mavericks in the 2011 finals. And then
that Game 2 lost that year. Game 2 in the finals, I think, is the worst loss in Heat history. Because they go up 2-0 there. They also won Game 3. Like, I think it's the worst loss in Heat history.
And you know what Brendan Haywood says, and actually all the Mavericks say it was the reason why they came back,
is because shadow boxing.
Yeah. I said, and they like legitimately said that.
I mean, it looks bad, in hindsight, so it looks bad.
It's one of those, and like, the fake coughing thing, like that actually like drove that team. Like they talked about it. Jason Terry was so angry and he went nuts for the rest of that series. And so, those little things, it's part of like sports mythology, whatever. But, if they make that much of a difference to an already, motivated and great team, like, Yeah, they kind of matter. But yeah, it just kind of takes you through the entire time. And then episode 4, I think it's next week. And
who do you have scheduled to come on? Who else you got scheduled?
Oh no, it's not. You? It's already done. It's already recorded in the can.
Okay, so who are some of the highlights, guys, that you were able to see?
Ray Allen, Udonis Haslam, Shane Battier, Mario Chalmers, Joakim Noah,
what?
Diao,
oh, okay.
Matt
I was
Bonner.
Why Joakim Noah? But obviously, okay.
Yeah, come on, man.
Well, I was only thinking about the finals, which of course it's not only about the finals; it's about the whole 4 years. That's why I said that.
Rachel Nichols, Tim Reynolds, Dan Levitard, Jim Gray, just a lot of people who've been in and around.
How come no one's written a book about those 4 years?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
wouldn't that be a good book?
Yeah, but my guess would be a lot of the access to Dwayne, Chris, and LeBron is limited because they're going to be doing their own projects, which is probably why they didn't come on mine.
It was a dozen years ago. Like, when are these projects coming out?
Well, I mean, LeBron just needs to retire already, and then they'll probably start working on those.
All right. Tell everyone again how they can catch that series.
It's called 4 Years of He, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever. It's with iHeartRadio. It's with the NBA. So far, 3 episodes out. I believe next week we're dropping 2 episodes, and the week after that, another 2. But yeah, it goes like the 10-year anniversary of that Ray Allen shot is this month. And that's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, DJ Khaled is in every episode too. If you want to understand, you have to listen.
Great job, Israel. Thanks for hanging out with us today, man. Tonight's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, definitely.